Eric, this is such an interesting story because not only do I know family and friends who have dealt with schizophrenia, I also have some friends who speak of San Gabriel like it's an island, like it's it's a place that we are from. This is where we go. So I guess tell me about the walls that the culture and different age groups can make in your mind as you see that, but also how maybe the older or culture looks in while younger people look out, like they look towards the news and all these things out there. And when you saw this story and started to put together, what did you see in that sense, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. What drew me to the story was like recognizing how the stigma of mental illness, really threw up these walls of shame, and created an isolation, where people would cut themselves off, like families would cut themselves off from the very people that could help them, and that's, to me, the tragedy of it. Like, San Gabriel Valley is exactly that. It's this ethnic enclave of, Chinese, and, you know, the mother Irene, like it wasn't a language barrier for her to talk to anybody, her neighbor, her best friend, any of these people in the film about her situation. It was purely, self-imposed cultural stigma that she felt like she could not share, she could not be vulnerable, she could not burden people, feel like she burdened people with knowledge of Joe's condition, and that's sort of like the conversations we hope to spark with the film, is to people to recognize that and see how it's really more of a moment of, need for connection, as opposed to isolation.
It's easy for a lot of people to kind of like set themselves in moments of like, what would I do or how would I do it? And as you said, culture is such a big part of that too. What were the conversations between you and Lucy when it came to those moments of um I guess Irene's moments of being in control and not in control at the same time?
Yeah, it was, it took a lot of sort of emotional detective work, when we were creating, when we were piecing it together. We have the article gives us these sort of factual goalposts about what happened here, there. But it was really about like what kind of headspace should she have to be to do this thing, right? And what kind of headspace should she have to be in to do this thing? And what, is just about grounding it emotionally as real as possible. And in Irene's perspective, what she thought was happening versus what, might have been happening for real. Like, he got taken into the police precinct. But her fear of what's, they might be writing some sort of record of him, or, she's not necessarily understanding exactly what's going on, but she's generating all this internal fear about his future and what it might mean. Can he still go to college? All these things that she's concerned, but it always is about his well-being, you know? And so there is like a, misunderstanding and misperception of like events, and she's coming to her own conclusions, which lead her down this sort of like treacherous path, unfortunately.
The one word that I'm going to bring into this for really in all senses to me is weight. It's the weight of culture, the weight of love, and the weight of mortality because she is dealing with that too. So,
Yeah.
in that sense, what did you think you saw in Irene when you were writing that article, when you were reading the article, when you're writing everything down? Because it's that weight of that responsibility that she kind of foisted on all three of those things.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. I love that image of the weight. Because I had this like image when we were starting to talk about the film of a woman who's like threatening to be drowned, right? She's like trying to keep herself afloat, keep everybody afloat, keep everything from like sort of swallowing them. So I think weight is a very appropriate way to think about it. And I think really it's about her taking ownership over, she feels this sense of responsibility over her son's actions, over his, his behavior, his psychology, to the extent where that she feels like she couldn't leave him alone, and couldn't leave him in a situation where he was, his behavior might be unpredictable and potentially cause harm, and I think that's what really, comes to her as like the mortality sort of becomes into question, and it really, really, forces her to make like an impossible choice.
Very much so. Well, a pleasure speaking with you. This is a very important story, and like I said, I know a lot of people who dealt with schizophrenia, bipolar schizophrenia, and things like that too. So, I know that nothing is easily. There's no
Yeah,
flavor. You can just say this is what it is. There's no answer. So,
yeah, absolutely.
have a good day. We'll make sure to share this message. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for watching.